Hello and welcome to this clip on ozonolysis. This is another extension topic that isn't actually covered at A-level, but sometimes it's touched upon in A-level textbooks. It's an extension topic because it's another way in organic synthesis that we can break open carbon-carbon double bonds, this time using an allotrope of oxygen called ozone. It's a highly reactive molecule and acts as an electrophile in this case. It can be easily made commercially from UV light, and subjecting oxygen to UV light at a certain wavelength will allow the oxygen molecules to change from O2 to O3. Now, the problem with ozone is it's actually quite an unstable molecule. As you can see, there's two different versions that move between one another by the transfer of pairs of electrons. This phenomenon is called resonance. It's found in many different organic compounds. You may have come across benzene if you're in your second year. If you're in your first year, you may not have come across it just yet, but resonance is where you get a delocalization, shown here in this diagram with a dotted line, of the location of electrons between more than two atoms. So therefore the electrons are shared between more than two atoms, so they can move back and forth at any one of a number of different frequencies. So let's try and build up a dot-cross diagram for ozone so we can understand a little bit more about what's going on before we start looking at ozonolysis. So if I was to colour code the two possible structures and link the two diagrams together, now what we can do is a dot-cross diagram for each of the two versions. So if you look at it closely, the arrangement of a dato-covalent single bond on one side and a double bond on the other just keeps swapping round. But like I said, it's not as stable as normal oxygen, or O2, diatomic oxygen, so in this sense it can react more easily as an electrophile. So ozone, as we've looked at, possesses an electron-deficient oxygen atom. It's either of its resonance structures. This is attracted to areas of electron density such as carbon-carbon double bonds. So essentially what happens is the carbon-carbon double bond breaks open and you get an oxygen atom that's double bonded onto each carbon, as shown in the products above. So this is not quite the same as electrophilic addition. We have to be a bit careful here. Although ozone is behaving as an electrophile, in electrophilic addition, only the pi bond is broken and the sigma bond is kept intact. This time both this pi and the sigma bond are broken, so it's not really an addition reaction, it's a separate type of reaction involving carbon-carbon double bonds. So like I've mentioned already, the ozonolysis takes place with reductive workup. And all that really means is that the C-C double bond is cleaved, it's broken open, and it replaces it with oxygen. So notice that the groups themselves, the CH3s and the H, they're actually left behind. They're not actually touched by this process. It's the carbon-carbon double bond that's actually involved. So if we apply this to slightly more complicated looking alkenes, such as cyclic alkenes, all that happens is the alkene ring, the cycloalkene ring, is broken open, and an oxygen is added to each of the carbons. So again, we have a carbon-carbon double bond which is cleaved, and oxygen is added. And our CH3,2S, or dimethyl sulfide, acts as a reducing agent in this particular case, but it could equally be any other reducing agent that would do the job just as well. So in this case you'd need 2 moles of ozone because there are 2 carbon-carbon double bonds in the molecule. So again, if we start with the two CC double bonds, but this time, if we split them into two sides, we've got this side and we have this side. So hopefully you can see where the ozonolysis is applied in each case. Okay, so let's now look at a slightly more advanced example. So for this one, you might want to pause the video a little bit and just have a think about the combinations that I put at the bottom of the screen. Grab a piece of paper and see if you can work out what the original alkene was if these product combinations are made after ozonolysis. So hopefully you got those structures that we've now colour-coded. I'll make the main set of options smaller so then I can put a key to enable you to see how they fit together. It's a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle really, just knowing what groups go with which individual products. So if you wanted to pause the video again and just do a quick check that the key in the middle of the screen matches the choices you made, then what we can do next is an applied exam question from a past paper. It wasn't actually a paper that required you to know about ozonolysis. It does give you some information about ozonolysis to help you get started. But let's have a look at how it might come across in an exam, if it was something like this were ever to come up. Right then, so this is an extract from a recent exam paper from the last 2 or 3 years. I think it was a 2014 paper. So it tells you a little bit about ozonolysis, just like we've talked about. All it really needs to say is what it does. So it gives you a version of the template that we've used in the last screen to split the carbon-carbon double bond open. Again, it doesn't justify where the third oxygen atom goes. We've dealt with that because it's a reducing agent, not the oxygen atom, but a reducing agent workup is used so that that oxygen atom is stabilized so that these two oxygen atoms here, I'm now talking about these two, can actually react as electrophiles with the carbon-carbon double bond. So let's have a look at what they want us to do. It says, draw the structure of the product you would expect from the complete ozonolysis. So let's be careful here. It's the complete ozonolysis of the following alkenes. So we start by drawing pent-2-ene. I don't know about you, but my preference for drawing alkenes always, doesn't matter what the actual size of the molecule, is to start with the carbon-carbon double bond and draw in the bond angles correctly like that. Now in this particular case I've drawn the trans version, or the E version, of pent-2-ene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also draw the equivalent structure for hexa-2,4-diene. Notice I haven't done the answer yet, because I've put down the structural or partially displayed formula of pent-2-ene to help myself visualize what to do with the oxygens when we actually add them on. So with hexa-2,4-diene it's a little trickier. You've got to think carefully how to arrange your two carbon-carbon double bonds along the same carbon chain. So I've only got four carbon atoms in my structure so far, but it's hexa-2,4-diene. So now we have our hexa-2,4-diene. The two carbon-carbon double bonds start at carbon number 2 and carbon number 4. It doesn't really matter which end you start from, because the alkene is symmetrical. You can actually count from either end when you're counting your carbons. So now I'm going to switch to another colour and do the equivalent products you'd get from ozonolysis. So what I'd suggest is using the question's template to help you. So I've started out by putting in the carbon double bond oxygens, and I've made them face each other in the same way that the question has. Now I can construct the remainder of it around that. So that first one was fairly straightforward. You can see how I've actually made the groups match the ones on my pent-2-ene. The second one is a little trickier. If you remember, we needed 2 moles of ozone for a diene, didn't we? So let's start from the left-hand side of the screen. So essentially what's happened now is we've taken care of this part. But what we've got to do now is think about what happens over here. So at this point we've now also dealt with what's happening here in the middle of the molecule. So we also now need to deal with the final part of the molecule over here. So essentially that means we have another of these. Like that. Okay, so now let's tidy this up a little bit so you can see a bit more clearly what I'm trying to say. So there's two of one type of aldehyde and one of another aldehyde. So let's move the question down a little bit and see what else it's asking us. Okay, in another ozonolysis reaction, compound G reacted to form only hexane 1,6-dial. So this time we're given the product, and they want us to work out what the original alkene was. So if we draw hexane 1,6-dial, let's work out how those double bond oxygens would have been made. So if we take the idea that only one carbon-carbon double bond is needed to make 2 times C double bond O, but at the same time the carbon-carbon double bond must be completely broken, e.g. sigma and pi bonds, together, it must mean that the original molecule was a 6-membered ring structure containing a carbon-carbon double bond. There's really only one candidate, isn't there? And that's cyclohexene. So let's have a look at the mark scheme and see how close we were. So doing my marking, I'm of course switching to red pen. And you ignore the first part of the mark scheme because that wasn't part of the question we looked at. For pent-2-ene, we got both. We need to get both to get our mark. So we've got that one. We got the 2 versions. They only asked for the actual identities, not necessarily the fact that there were 2 of one and 1 of another. But we got our 2 marks there, and we also worked out cyclohexene. So happy days. So, hopefully you found this a reasonably interesting and, dare I say it, useful introduction to ozonolysis. Again, it's not something that's in the A-level syllabus, but it pops up occasionally as an extension piece in A-level textbooks. And you could see from this particular question that it was done as a deductive question. They would not have expected the candidates in 2014 to have been somehow taught about ozonolysis. It's deliberately put in there as something that is new to see if the candidates could work out what's going on. Okay, so as always, thank you for your time, appreciate you listening, and hopefully see you soon.